Dexter Season 2 has got to be my favorite season of the show, although I will say that Season 4 is probably the best season overall. Season 2, though, is just so fun and full of surprises and extraordinarily tense. I don't know if that's a controversial take, just let me know down in the comments, because I don't really stay up to date with like the Dexter fandom. This season fully embraces what Season 1 got right, and even takes some risks by upping the stakes from Season 1. Miami Metro Homicide and eventually the FBI will begin investigating a killer so clean, so precise, so dedicated to his craft, a killer that will become known as the Bay Harbor Butcher, or as locals know him, Dexter Morgan, blood spatter forensics analyst and resident happy-go-lucky goofball with a girlfriend and 2 children, whom Dexter has unofficially started co-raising. If you missed the first video in this series, I highly recommend you go check it out, because unless you've seen Dexter, you'll be immensely confused by this video. I've also decided to shorten this video a little bit. As you may notice, the first video is just a tad longer than this one, and that is because I feel as though in the first video I spent so much time setting up Dexter as a character in particular that in this one you don't need so much context as to why Dexter does a certain thing or why Dexter feels a certain way about a certain thing or someone, unless it's a new character or a new thing he's encountering, and in that case, I very much will break it down for you. That leads me to the fact that I won't be talking about the flashbacks all that much in this season, and that's because the flashbacks don't really tell us anything new that we haven't already seen in the flashbacks from Season 1. And with all that being said, I think it is finally time to dive into Dexter Season 2. So the premiere episode of Dexter Season 2 opens with the exact same monologue from the premiere of the first episode, only slightly different.
Tonight's the night, and it's going to happen again and again. Has to happen. It's not what I want, but what I want doesn't matter. I'm coiled and ready to strike.
Dexter's not introducing us to his next kill, he's showing us his new hobby of participating in the Miami Metro bowling team. A small detail I love about their bowling team outfits are that it says on the back of it, "Till you bleed," which is a fun little nod to the fact that not only do they investigate homicides, but Dexter himself as a character commits them. I mentioned this in the Season 1 video, but the writers love to sprinkle in little hints and like jokes and to poke fun at the fact that Dexter is a killer. And why not have a little fun with that? Like, put him in these little situations that poke fun at the fact that he kills people and no one knows about it. There's a scene in Season 1 at some point where Rita's just like, "You could never be like Paul, you're like a really good person," or whatever, and then Dexter's just like, "If only she knew." We then learn through Dexter's inner monologue that it has been 38 days, 16 hours, and 12 minutes since he killed his brother in the Season 1 finale. We also learn during this monologue that Dexter's attempt at joining this bowling team is all just a ploy to get James Dokes, who has been tailing him, off his back. For anyone who needs a quick refresher, Sergeant James Dokes is literally the only person at Miami Metro Homicide who can see through Dexter's facade. He doesn't quite know that Dexter is a serial killer, but beginning in the very first episode, and probably even prior to that, Dokes genuinely gets the creeps from Dexter, stating on multiple occasions that he's hiding something. Dexter believes that by joining an extracurricular activity with his coworkers, he will be seen as more normal, according to Dokes. Now, what I want to point out is how weird it must seem to an outsider of this situation that a cop is just tailing this guy in forensics who is seemingly normal to the outside world. I mean, Dexter doesn't get questioned by really anyone else about how weird he is. It's just kind of part of his personality. But there's just something that Dokes sees. Dokes can just tell that there's something off about him. This dynamic between the two, I would say, is probably the main storyline this season. Dexter and Dokes' relationship this season is genuinely what makes the season for me. Dokes was not my favorite character in Season 1, but here in Season 2, as you'll come to see, the writers decide to embed him with a lot more layers and complexity than he had in Season 1. The first season kind of underutilized Dokes, in my opinion, and only kind of hinted at some of the themes and character traits that we would explore more in depth here in season 2, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Since Dokes has been tailing Dexter all winter, Dexter has not been able to kill anybody in the past month. According to Dexter,
I wish I could have fun. With Dokes tailing me, my life's been all Jekyll and no Hyde. No late night social calls, not one. My brother would be so disappointed.
Dokes leaves the bowling alley, which allows Dexter to begin his next kill. Dexter claims he has known who is quote-unquote next for weeks now. He's just been unable to act on it since he's had Dokes tailing him for a month. This is not new behavior from Dexter, as we saw in the first season. Dexter often spends days or weeks stalking his victims, learning every single detail about their scheduled lives, hoping to eventually prove that they fit his code. According to Dexter, his latest victim, a blind voodoo priest named Jimmy Sensio, is at least partially responsible for the death of 3 people who all died of respiratory failure. Dexter claims that Jimmy killed all 3 of these people to essentially prove that his voodoo works. While on Dexter's table, the man refuses to confess that he killed all 3 of those people, instead pretending to be possessed by a demon or spirit or something. Jimmy then finally confesses to killing the 3 people, but still blames it on the spirit that is possessing him. Dexter hesitates to stab the man before issuing him a warning and letting the man go. Later that night, Dexter sits on his boat drinking when he had originally planned to be dumping a body by this point. Dexter ponders over his hesitation to kill that man, stating,
I've always enjoyed my work. It brings order to the chaos, fills me with civic pride. But what was that back there? Not voodoo. When I picked up the knife, it's like I didn't know who I was. I come here to dump bodies, not beer bottles. Now I'm just a litter bug.
Dexter returns home to his apartment, where Deb greets him as she is now living there. The 2 siblings haven't exactly taken to this change all that well. In the weeks following the whole ice truck killer situation, Deb hasn't had the best time mentally. She went through an extremely traumatic event and has had to lean on her brother for extra support, seeing as he's really the only family she has left. Dexter is the extremely tidy, neat, control freak of the family, and Deb is a little bit more spontaneous, messy, and loud. So that combination, living in the same apartment, is not exactly a joyous thing for Dexter, who needs his space. However, Deb is there because she just experienced a trauma, so Dexter understands. He can make a concession for a couple months to allow his traumatized sister to stay with him. Elsewhere, Deb finally returns to work and is promptly welcomed back by Maria, somewhat squashing their beef. Although, just because Maria acts nice to Deb, it doesn't mean that she actually always has her best interest in mind, because in the very next scene, Maria heads to Thomas Matthews, the captain of Miami Metro Police Department, and tells him that she doesn't think Deb is ready to go back to work yet, because she can just tell that Deb is still slightly traumatized, and putting her out in the field is probably not a good idea. For those of you who don't remember, Pascal is now the lieutenant in charge of Miami Metro Homicide, and I think everything that Maria does this season is to try and stay on Pascal's good side, because Maria, if you guys don't remember, was the lieutenant of Homicide, and now she's just another detective, just another, well, I think she's a sergeant or something, but she's still up there, but she got demoted down. So yeah, everything she does this season, just watch Maria. Just watch Maria, that's all I'm gonna say. Pascal, on the other hand, goes into this season strong. She's up here, and then things kind of take a turn. Later on, the team investigates a crime scene that they determine is gang-related. When Dexter steps accidentally into the victim's blood, Angel points out that Dexter seems a little off lately. Just before, Dexter forgot to take the lens cap off of his camera. Dexter makes it a point to explain to the audience on multiple occasions that if he cannot fulfill his need to hunt people, then his ability to do his job and maintain his relationships falls a little short. This scene is a prime example of that happening right in front of our eyes. It's been too long since Dexter has gotten up to what he likes to get up to in the night. A little bit later on, a crying woman makes her way onto the scene and reveals the victim is her son, just before also explaining to Dexter in Spanish that the man was killed by someone named Lil Chino. In another scene, Deb is interviewing an eyewitness when a group of men attempt to get a rise out of her.
Look scared for the camera.
Morgan?
Thank you.
For some context, these guys on the sidelines know that Deborah is the ex-girlfriend to the ice truck killer, and they are just trying to provoke her to get her to act out or feel emotional. Maria watches all of this unfold and worries that allowing Deb onto the field was probably not a good idea. Not only because of what she might encounter out in the wild, but because of how she may react when she finds it. In the end, Deb remains strong and gives the boys pretty much nothing but a smile. Back at the station, Dexter gathers intel on Lil Chino from Deb, and just then, a behemoth of a man walks into the station, claiming to be Lil Chino himself. Later on, the victim's mother goes on record that Lil Chino picked up the victim the night of his death, which places Lil Chino as like the main suspect. And in the very next scene, we learn that the victim's mother is a heroin addict, and therefore she won't be able to testify in court because a jury's not going to take a heroin addict seriously, at least according to the people in the station. So they let Lil Chino go. We also get a scene where Rita visits Paul in jail with the kids, and Paul tries to blame him being in jail on Dexter, which technically isn't incorrect, seeing as Dexter was the one to shoot him up with heroin and then call the police. I just find it funny that like Paul is just like, he just jumped to that conclusion. Like there's just no evidence supporting this theory other than the fact that there was a shoe left in the backyard. He doesn't remember getting hit in the head with that frying pan. So it's like, where does he like get that theory that Dexter did all of this? It's kind of lazy writing in my opinion. Rita tells Paul that she doesn't believe his story despite finding the shoe in the backyard that he tried to get her to find. So there's that. In another scene, we see a group of divers discovering tons of trash bags and body parts at the bottom of the Atlantic. That night, Dexter makes plans to kill Lil Chino, first losing Dokes at the bowling alley before heading off to Lil Chino's place. Dexter decides to use 2 doses of M99 on Chino before dragging his body to Jimmy Sensio's old shop. In his second attempt to kill someone this season, Dexter chokes yet again, failing to hold Lil Chino down long enough to put him out of his misery. Dexter returns to Rita's house to find her in tears. Rita reveals that Paul was killed by another man in prison, and now she has to explain this to her children, and also she kind of feels a little bit guilty that she could have helped Paul get out of jail, and she chose not to. At the end of the episode, Dexter returns home, and Deborah shows him a news report on the trash bags in the ocean, essentially revealing the big picture of this season. Dexter's not hunting someone this season like he was with the ice truck killer. Dexter is being hunted. Overall, a genuinely great season premiere. I feel as though the first episode of this season is usually harder to get into in a lot of shows because the writers are just usually introducing the themes that they'll be exploring throughout the season. And at times, premieres can feel very low stakes, but I actually really enjoyed how the writers call Dexter's confidence into question here. His inability to carry out a kill just when he may be discovered is what might be his downfall. The second episode of the season begins with Dexter laying in bed, pondering what is wrong with him lately.
I finally get a chance to kill and I can't do it. Then a second chance and he gets away. And now all my secrets are floating to the surface. Where is the orderly, controlled, effective Dexter? How did I lose him? How do I find him again? I'm drifting. But not to sleep.
Elsewhere, Angel reveals that Ava, who is the mother of the kid who was killed in the last episode, has also been killed, likely by Lil Chino. The next morning, Dexter heads over to Rita's house, and she is in just a little bit of a sour mood in the wake of her ex-husband's death. Seeing what somber moods Aster, Cody, and Rita are in, Dexter has a hard time understanding how they can feel so strongly about Paul's death, despite his abusive nature. Again showcasing Dexter's inability to comprehend complex emotions. At work, Deb is taken off infield duty, essentially meaning that she's not going to be leaving the precinct anytime soon because of the incident that happened at the last crime scene. Also, the precinct learns that the FBI is sending Frank Lundy, a quote-unquote rock star serial killer hunter, to lead the investigation on the Bay Harbor Butcher, which is what the papers are calling Dexter. Just then, Lil Chino walks into the precinct with his lawyer to clear his name. Chino shows Angel a video with a timestamp that reads March 2nd, 2007, giving the man a viable alibi. The station is forced to cut Chino loose, essentially clearing his name yet again. Tom reveals during a meeting with everyone that the Bay Harbor Butcher's kill count is up to 14. Frank Lundy then presents the Miami team with loads of information about the case, even disproving the involvement of the ice truck killer, which was a theory that was floating around in the media for a while. Later on, Deb meets this guy at the gym and gets freaked out when he tries to tape her wrists, because he's like training her on how to box, and so like she needs to tape her wrists, and it like gives her PTSD from when Rudy was taping her and binding her together. That night, Dexter is ambushed by a group of Lil Chino's friends, yet again preventing him from taking Little Chino out. At the service, which is only being attended by Rita, the kids, and Dexter, Dexter uncomfortably sits in the pews, unsure how to act. It's here where Dexter gets visited by the ghost of Brian. I don't think it's actually a ghost. I think it's more of Dexter's conscience, or a figment of Dexter's imagination, rather, that visits him. In the scene, Dexter begs Brian to leave him alone. Dexter eventually realizes he needs to let Brian go if he wants to move on and recover from the funk that he's been in. That night, Dexter finally apprehends Chino by cornering him in a warehouse elevator. Dexter ties Chino down so that he cannot escape this time before he commits the first kill of the season. And with that, Dexter finally has his mojo back. He eventually dumps his body in the Gulf Stream, which would carry him all the way up the coast of the United States, preventing the feds from finding it in Florida. At the end of the episode, Rita confronts Dexter about Paul's shoe. Rita then asks Dexter point blank if he had anything to do with Paul's arrest, and Dexter has no choice but to confess.
I hit Paul to protect you and the kids. It's totally an active impulse.
Where did you get the drugs?
This is when Rita stumbles upon the incorrect realization that Dexter must be a drug addict if he knew how to cook the heroin that he injected Paul with. Dexter has no chance but to lie and go along with this realization of Rita's, because the alternative of her finding out that he's actually a serial killer and has knocked people out before is not a good one. This absolutely crushes Rita, as she just started to feel comfortable with Dexter. She basically has to relive her relationship with Paul now. She does decide to embrace Dexter though, because so far in her eyes, Dexter is not a violent man like Paul was. But knowing that he has a problem does complicate their relationship slightly. At the end of the episode, Dexter throws the doll head that he keeps on a keychain in the ocean to sort of say goodbye to his brother one last time, in hopes that he will be able to move on from this funk that he's been in. The third episode of the season opens with Dexter attending his first NA meeting. During the sharing session, Dexter is eyed by a woman with jet black hair and pale skin. And don't worry, she's important, we'll come back to her. Halfway through though, Dexter decides to leave the meeting because he realizes this kind of thing is just not for him, so he returns home. The next morning, Dexter arrives at work, making his way through a sea of loved ones, all supposedly tied to victims of the Bay Harbor Butcher. Later on, Captain Matthews names Batista, Masuka, and Deb as some of Special Agent Lundy's task force members. This task force is basically on the front lines of the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation, and so having Deb up there is really interesting considering the fact that she was only like in Vice like 6 months ago. Later on, Dexter investigates a car salesman who has ties to 2 deaths. At the dealership, Dexter fakes needing a new car before stealing the man's hairbrush to test his DNA against some DNA at some crime scenes. A little bit later on at the lab, Dexter realizes that this man's hair is synthetic, basically preventing him from confirming that he is the killer. This is when Vince shows up and reveals that he got Dexter put on the Bay Harbor Butcher case. A little bit later on, they enter a tent full of bodies, and Dexter gets to see his work all brought back to him in gelatinous bags that were floating at the bottom of the ocean for God knows how long. Elsewhere, Deb interviews a woman who is said to be one of the Bay Harbor Butcher's victims' family members. All of these interviews with the loved ones prove to be a little bit too exhausting for Deb because she's, like I said earlier, pretty much still traumatized, so she asks Lundy to take her off the case, which is something that pretty much every cop in that station is vying for. They want on the Bay Harbor Butcher case, and the fact that Deb just like wants to get off of it is a little strange to Lundy. That night, Dexter heads back to NA as he promised Rita he would. He collects his newcomer's chip and is somewhat forced to share his story. Dexter lies about his addiction, claiming to shoot heroin. He catches the eye of the woman with black hair from before that I told you about, and after the meeting, Dexter is confronted by her. The duo share a coffee at a restaurant nearby, and you can tell this woman sees right through Dexter's story. The woman's name is Lila. Lila ends up speaking to something inside Dexter, as her struggles with addiction sort of mirror his struggles with being a serial killer. Not to compare a serial killer to a drug addict, because one of those things is way, way worse than the other. Just as far as how Dexter feels on the inside, he kind of feels seen and heard for the first time since Brian died. After returning home, Dexter tells Rita that he doesn't want to continue going to NA as he feels it may trigger something inside him to relapse. And Rita, she's not going to settle for that, so she kicks Dexter out. Dexter returns to the car dealership the next morning, and in the dealer's office, Dexter runs into a woman. He recognizes the man's pattern at work and realizes that this woman is the man's next victim.
Another brunette. Single. Neighbors at a distance. No guard dog. The credit check gives Roger all the details he needs. She's next.
Elsewhere, Deb confronts Lundy about not taking her off the task force after she previously asked him to do so, and Lundy reveals that he only picked her to be on the task force because she has prior experience with a serial killer. No, I'm not talking about Dexter, obviously I'm talking about the ice truck killer, her former fiancé, Rudy Cooper, aka Brian Moser. Also, Tom confronts Maria about Pascal's outbursts as of late. I don't think I explained this yet, but Pascal, who is the new lieutenant of homicide, has been a little bit on edge as of late. She thinks that her fiance is cheating on her, and she's like taking a bunch of personal calls during work and using department funds to look into his background and stuff, and it's just like, it's a whole thing. So Tom is asking Maria basically like, what's going on? But Maria decidedly takes Pascal's side and says that there's nothing going on. So that's a little interesting coming from Maria, just keep that in mind. That night, Lundy is inside the tent around the same time Dexter enters to drop off some papers. The two get to talking, and Lundy pretty much lays out Dexter's very own code as a possible MO of the Bay Harbor Butcher, which is just like so funny that he was able to literally guess what this killer looks for in a victim based on the little evidence that he has. Okay, he does have a bunch of bodies, but like, whatever. It's just funny that it matches Dexter's exact MO. That night, Dexter takes a knife to Dokes's tire to prevent him from following him so that he can confront Roger, the car dealer, and if you know what I mean.
You're wrong. I wouldn't.
No, you would, and you did, and you were about to do it again. That's why we're here.
No, this is crazy. You got the wrong guy. I sell cars, for God's sake. I've never hurt anyone in my life. Definitely not a woman.
Why can't I do that?
Do what?
Lie like that. When I thought I was good, but you...
I don't lie.
Okay, that one was weak.
Okay, look, any car on the lot, it's yours. T-Bird, town car, you name it. Yours, free. I'll call it in right now.
Lot's closed.
I'll have them open it up. I'm the manager. They do what I say.
The manager's name is Rick Buxton.
Well, yeah, but I've been there longer than he has.
You've been there 3 months.
At the other lot.
It's like watching someone ski moguls. You just hop from one lie to the next. No shame, no embarrassment. You just don't give a shit. That's the key, right? Not to care about anyone or anything.
I care a lot.
No, it was a compliment. I don't care either.
The next day, Dexter attends an NA meeting and relates his experience as a killer to the attendees' experience as addicts. After his share, Dexter is confronted by Dokes, of all people, who was able to follow him despite not having any air in his tire. This is where Dokes kind of lays off of Dexter because he has sympathy for him. At the precinct, Deborah interviews yet another loved one of a victim who claims that he's glad his father is gone.
He made our lives a living hell. When he'd go to prison, it was a blessing, but you kept letting him out.
I need to tell my mother, my sister, that they're safe and that he's rotting in hell. Call me when you can tell me that.
This allows Deb to sort of put two and two together that pretty much every single victim so far that she's looked into has had a past of either being abusive or a criminal or has been in and out of jail. So she brings this theory to Lundy, who was kind of already thinking the same thing. So that kind of narrows their search a little bit about identifying the rest of these bodies. At the end of the episode, Dexter tells Rita he's sorry for doubting the program, as now he's decided that, you know, maybe NA works, because after sharing his feelings with everybody, he actually feels a lot better today than he did before. Oh, also, the next day after this, right after, like at the very end of the episode, Rita finds out that Dexter's new sponsor is in fact Lila, that woman from before, who Dexter low-key was like enamored with. This is sort of a spoiler for the rest of the season, but Dexter's new NA sponsor, Lila, will become an important character to say the very least. As Dexter pretends to have a drug problem that needs fixing, Rita feels torn about his decision to stay the course. It was kind of her idea to attend the NA meetings in the first place, and yet going forward, she finds herself questioning whether Dexter can remain faithful to her with a woman as his sponsor. Given how Lila's words affected Dexter so, it's no shock Dexter wants to continue attending his meetings. He finally feels heard for once. For the first time since Brian died, Dexter feels like he has a group of people he can relate to, even if their drug issues don't necessarily match his perpetual need to tie criminals down to a table, collect a blood slide from their cheek before ending their lives. Lila not only challenges Dexter's thoughts about who he is, but also who he needs to become in order to recover from his addiction. In the conversation the duo had about their issues, Dexter brands the dark parts of themselves their dark passengers, a nickname that'll continue to be used to describe the quote-unquote evil half of Dexter. Not only is this an interesting way for Dexter to differentiate himself from his own crimes, making them seem more justified in his own eyes, but it also kind of works on the audience. The episode opens with Rita deep cleaning the house before she reveals that her previously estranged mother is coming to town to stay with them. This is when Cody walks in and claims to have had a bad dream about the Bay Harbor butcher.
He would never hurt you. My sister Deborah, who is a secret police agent ninja warrior, said he only kills bad people. You're not a bad person, are you?
Cody leaves, and then Rita says,
Makes me so angry that there's some monster out there scaring my son. You know, I hope they catch him today. And I'm not a violent person, but I hope they hurt him. Have a good day.
Make up your mind.
At work, Lundy shares his theory about the Bay Harbor butcher only targeting criminals and killers. Just then, Masuka reveals to everyone that he's just discovered a breakthrough in the case. Flustered about what Vince might have seen or discovered, Dexter decides to leave work early to visit Lila at her apartment. After stealing a bunch of wind chimes for some reason, Lila asks Dexter about his addiction.
What do you use?
I don't know, it's just part of who I am.
And who are you?
I'm a bad person.
You haven't got the first idea who you are, have you? Dexter? Meet Dexter. I'm gonna help the two of you get to know each other.
Later on, Dexter gets called into a crime scene of a woman who suffered a gunshot to the chest. Dexter tries to get the inside scoop about the supposed big breakthrough in the BHB case, prompting Dokes to yell at Dexter for focusing his attention on something other than the case at hand. It's here where Dokes points out that this woman was killed in a very specific way that he recognizes back from his times in Special Ops. And the killer, get this, is supposedly the husband of the woman. Elsewhere, Masuka, Angel, and Deb enter the morgue tent before being introduced to the identified BHB victims. Lundy has everyone look into the bodies that have no criminal records to see if they can find a connection to a previous crime that they could have committed. They're doing all of this so that they can fit all of these victims into their vigilante theory. As they're about to leave, Lundy tells Deb that he has a date set for later that night before suggesting she get out and date people, which is like kind of an HR violation, like just a little bit. So yeah, Deb takes his advice and goes on a date, or rather hooks up with that guy from the gym and has to handcuff him to the bed because she's scared that he's going to kill her. The next morning, Deb explains to Dexter that Masuka found microscopic algae on the bodies. Algae which will help prove which marina these bags came from. Later on in the station, Pascal has a bit of a mental breakdown when Masuka says that he can't test a shirt for a smell. There's no amount of forensics magic that can be worked in order to find out what something smells like. This whole incident causes Tom to confront Maria yet again and basically give her her old job back and fire Pascal. Also, Dokes confronts Curtis Barnes, the man who it was said to have killed his wife. The duo come to a standoff, and after a tense couple of seconds, the man is about to kill himself, which Dokes prevents by shooting him anyway. On his lunch break, Dexter tries to end things with Lila. However, right after this, Dexter is confronted by Lila at his work. Lila then begs Dexter for another chance at being his sponsor, and Dexter cautiously gives her another chance. In the next scene, Dexter decides to show Lila the tent in response to her claiming he's not evil. This is practically him disguising his own evil as someone else's to prove not only to himself that he is evil, but also to prove to her that there is evil out in the world by literally showing her his own evil, just pretending that it's someone else's. Lila seems pretty fascinated by the dead bodies in front of her before she claims,
We're all good, Dexter. And we're all evil.
Later that night, Dexter turns off the generator outside of the tent, which allows the body to decompose at a very rapid rate since it's very hot outside. Also in this episode, it's revealed that Maria slept with Pascal's boyfriend, which would eventually get her promoted, and it's just like, if you really think about it, that is such an evil, sick, twisted plan by Maria. Love Maria to death, that's Mother. Okay, I won't say anything bad about her because I love her as a character and I think she's one of the best characters on the show. But when you really think about it, this is really evil. This is genuinely evil. The next morning, the task force finds the mess Dexter made of the tent, and just after this, Dexter learns that his efforts were for no reason as...
Good thing the heat didn't affect the rocks. Lundy had us store them separately.
The rocks?
Yeah, the algae we found on the rocks. Bay Harbor Butcher used him to weigh his bags down. We're assuming he picked him up where he docks his boat.
This is really unfortunate for Dexter, who thought he took care of the problem, but now has an entirely new issue to deal with. The fifth episode opens with Dexter and others investigating a comic book store, before one of the employees informs Dexter that his coworker created a fictional version of the Bay Harbor Butcher called the Dark Defender. For a moment, Dexter looks at the camera and considers adopting the moniker and costume before shooting it down, citing how hot it would be inside leather in Miami. Later on, Dexter attends another NA meeting with Lila. During this meeting, Dexter drifts off and dreams about the fictional version of his past, where the Dark Defender saves his mother from being killed. Just then, Dexter wakes up and explains the dream and his past with his mother to Lila. Lila suggests that Dexter was actually trying to save himself rather than his mom. With Lila's help, Dexter begins wondering what happened to the men who killed her. Lila suggests Dexter go and confront them in order to ask them why they did what they did. You know, as a step in his recovery or something. The next morning at Rita's, Gail confronts Dexter about her suspicions regarding his character. She believes that, like Paul, he's hiding something, pointing to the fact that Rita recently printed out NA pamphlets. Dexter confesses to having an addiction, and Gail, in turn, tries to get Dexter to leave Rita. At the station, the task force narrows down the location of where the algae came from down to 3 marinas, one of them obviously being Dexter's. Elsewhere, Dexter investigates his mother's passing, gathering old files on the men who killed her. The last surviving member of the gang that killed his mom, named Santos Jimenez, is currently working in a bar outside of Naples. We also learn that Jimenez has been in witness protection for the last 30 years. Also in this scene, Dexter listens to to a tape recording of his father and his birth mother discussing their operation together. This is where Dexter learns that his mother was Harry's CI. Back at the comic book crime scene, Maria excitedly tells Dokes that there will be no charges against him regarding the shooting of Curtis Barnes. She then asks whether or not he's received any kind of therapy, seeing as he's been involved in 2 on-duty shootings in less than 6 months. Dokes is only focused on the case at hand, and he's basically already put Curtis out of his mind, like it was nothing. Later that night, Dexter and Lila decide to go on a trip to Naples to confront Santos Jimenez so that Dexter can get answers as to why he killed his mother. At the man's bar, Dexter expresses his emotions to him.
But I need to tell you how I feel.
No, what you need to do is leave, because you've been eyeballing me all night.
You really shouldn't do that. You stole my life.
What the fuck? You are really beginning to piss me off.
I'm not the person I'm supposed to be because you took someone from me.
The man then threatens Dexter, saying that if he doesn't get out of the bar, he's going to bash his head in with a baseball bat. So Dexter decides to beat the man up, nearly to death. He throws him on the pool table before getting a confession out of the man. Lila then gives Dexter a call in the middle of all this and tries to talk him off the ledge. After returning to the hotel, Dexter cuddles with Lila, who almost takes the place of Dexter's mother in this scene, coddling him in his emotional state. The next morning, after a night of snuggles, Lila tells Dexter about her ex-boyfriend named Marco. Lila explains that one night after Marco dumped her, she burned his house to the ground, killing him.
One night, I was so fucked up, God. I went to his house and I burnt it to the ground. They didn't know was that Marco was passed out inside. They blamed the fire on his drugs. That night I went to my first meeting. Seeing that side of myself was terrifying. I could possibly do that to another person.
After this confession, Dexter tells Lila that she didn't do anything wrong, actually, because her boyfriend, quote-unquote, deserved it, essentially applying his own code to Lila's own crime. Later on, Dexter returns to Rita's house. Rita and Dexter essentially decide that they're staying together, despite what Gail wants. Gail then reveals that she's moving to Miami to live with her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, a decision that everyone in the house is a little bit uncomfortable about. So we're gonna see where that takes everyone in the next episode. That night, Dexter decides to clean every square inch of his boat in anticipation of Lundy finding something on it. This would have been a really smart plan had Dexter remembered that Deb said that the feds were going to put all 3 marinas under investigation, under surveillance. Had he also noticed that this had already been done and there was a security camera on him the entire time. You know, Dexter is a smart man for quite the majority of this series, but this is just one of those things that I'm just like, how did you not remember Deb say that? Like, Deb literally said that Lundy was going to put security cameras on his marina, and he didn't even think to check if they were there. At the beginning of the episode, Dexter re-listens to some of the tapes that he got from the records lady in the episode prior, and figures out that his mother and adoptive father Harry were seeing each other while she was his CI. This revelation kind of sends Dexter into orbit. He's a little bit shocked, a little bit confused, a little bit angry at his father for never telling him this. Dexter then heads to Lila's house for some advice, and you can already tell the person he's going to when things start to go wrong is no longer Rita, it's Lila. A little bit later on at work, Lundy asks Dexter to join him on a special mission to go look at a tip that came across the station that morning regarding the BHB. At the scene, a man claims to have been tied down by the BHB inside of a train car. However, Dexter knows that this so-called victim is lying, as he was nowhere near the scene the time that this man claims. With Dexter at this scene, he has to be extraordinarily careful and precise about what words he chooses to say when discussing the BHB with Lundy, because one wrong slip up and Lundy might be on to Dexter. Dexter has to kind of go along with Lundy's theory, but also not point him in his own direction. At the station, Dexter learns that the cameras at the marina from the night before recorded him, but they don't have access to the files yet because this is like super early 2000s and like things aren't like immediate yet. So he has to wait to get the files to delete them, but he's in the clear for now. That night at Dexter's apartment, Rita and Dexter are about to get down and dirty when Lila leaves Dexter a voicemail stating,
Calling to check in. Thought we could do the debriefing on dinner. Rita's sweet. Very Martha Stewart.
I love Martha Stewart.
Got her mum. She's got quite the rod up her ass, doesn't she? By the way, I am such a twat. I can't believe I almost slipped up about your mum. Mind you, it could have been worse. Could have spilled the beans about our road trip. That would have been a bloody
Don't you
laugh.
dare.
Imagine Mita's face if I told her that you and I had spent the night together in a hotel. Anyway,
You and Lila stayed in a hotel together. God, I am such an idiot. I can't believe I defended you to my mother while you were off sleeping with another woman.
Rita, wait.
I thought you were different than Paul, but you're the same. Actually, you're worse. You made me trust you.
this kind of fucks up Rita and Dexter's relationship for a good portion of this season. They basically break up from this moment forward. And the next morning, Dexter tells Deb about his breakup with Rita. Deb is particularly frustrated at Dexter because she sees how perfect Rita is for him and how good that relationship was. And to see Dexter fuck it up pisses her off, so she lets him know how she feels about it. She tries to get Dexter to go after Rita, which makes sense for Deb's character, seeing as she's had a hard time with love lately. Things have been just a little messy for her as far as the love department goes. Seeing Dexter's so-called perfect relationship in shambles kind of rocks Deb's world because if Dexter can't make a relationship work, then she knows that she's screwed. Because remember, Deb thinks that Dexter is the normal one in the family. She doesn't know that he's a fucking serial killer. She thinks that he's a normal guy, and she's like psycho. In Dexter's office, he discovers Dokes snooping around the Harry tapes. The two have a confrontation, resulting in Dexter asking Maria to file a complaint against Dokes. She orders him to get some air and take the rest of the evening off. This allows Dexter to return to Lila's house for advice in the pouring rain, and he kind of yells at her. He kind of lashes out at her for letting it slip that they spent a night together in a hotel room over voicemail when Rita was in the room. And then this kind of results in them hooking up. It's official, Dexter is now seeing Lila, which is totally not a breach of their sponsor-sponsee relationship at all. After this transgression, Dexter gets a call from Rita claiming that she wants to try and work things out with Dexter and hear him out. Back at the station, Batista and Lundy question the prime BHB suspect, whom they eventually come to realize is a copycat. Elsewhere in the station, Dexter pulls the fire alarm to cause an evacuation, which allows him to delete the files of himself at the marina from the night prior. And later that night, Dexter attacks the copycat BHB, later getting a confession from the man before finally killing him. That night, during his meeting with Rita, Dexter accidentally reveals the fact that he did sleep with Lila, just not in the hotel room like Rita had expected. So then Rita promptly kicks Dexter out and proclaims that they are officially over forever. And then Dexter returns to Lila's place, and that is where the episode ends. The episode opens with Dexter leaving Lila's place before returning back to his to get lectured by Deb yet again for leaving Rita. At the station, Angel reveals to Dexter, as well as us, the audience, that the BHB sent in a manifesto. It's here where Dexter reveals that the manifesto was sent in by himself to kind of thwart the police and like get them off his trail. At the crime scene from earlier, Dexter photographs the husband of the victim, noticing slight misting on the man's shirt. In the next scene, Dexter lies to Dokes and claims that the man is a prime suspect due to the misting. And later, he confesses to us, the audience, that the misting was just like a small misting that happened when he was like touching her, like picking her up. And that if he were the actual killer, the misting would have been much more prominent, if that makes any sense. So why did Dexter lie about this small little thing that could literally put this man in jail? Well,
this is my chance to make Dokes go away without spilling a single drop of his blood. Of course, I have to sell an innocent man down the river. Sorry, Mr. Wilson, but I won't let you float too far.
That night, Dexter and Lila go out for dinner, claiming to be a married couple in order to get a table. Lila then explains that Dexter has made excellent progress on his addiction. Even though Dexter is not an addict, Lila's words continue to speak to him. Dexter's inner demons are soothed when Lila is around, which is something he didn't quite get with Rita, since Rita herself was somewhat broken. Because Lila is this strong barrel of wisdom and spontaneity, Dexter clings to her in his time of uncertainty and distress. I mean, he's being hunted by the FBI and his own sister. He's lost his girlfriend and her kids, who he had actually grown to love. He's recently discovered that his father and birth mother were having an affair, and finally, he's just recovered from losing his birth brother, who was the last person on Earth to know the real him. It's no shocker he's turned to Lila in times of crisis. He kind of views her as a beacon of hope in his life, despite the fact that she's been somewhat destructive. The next morning, Dexter drops the blood report on Dokes' desk, which makes no mention of the misting on the man's shirt. Dexter then informs Maria that the blood report has been on Dokes' desk since last night. Maria then sends the man home and lectures Dokes for his sloppy police work.
He planned this whole thing. Maria, that psychopath set me up.
You're blaming Dexter for this?
Do you have any idea how pathetic that sounds? This is not about Dexter. This is about the poor judgment you have been displaying in this department for months now.
Concurrent to these scenes, the task force continues to mull over the literary references in this manifesto, and it looks like Dexter's going to get everything he wants. Sergeant Dokes is backing off of him, and suddenly this task force is just so confused about what this manifesto is about. Until the next day, Dokes finds Dexter in his office and says,
I tried every avenue, legal and otherwise. There ain't no paper trail on the early years of Dexter Morgan.
Dexter then headbutts Dokes.
No matter what you try, no matter when, no matter how hard you work, I'll always be a step ahead of you for one simple reason. I own you.
Fuck.
Why are you doing this? Stop!
I want your gun, your badge, and your police ID. I want your access card too.
This is all in order to make Dokes look like he attacked Dexter when he in fact was attacked by Dexter first. Dexter really played his cards right here. I swear I have never been so enamored by a bad guy like this before. The way he fudged the blood report to make Dokes look insane, the offhand mentions of the fact that Dokes was tailing him to Maria, and the fact that he provoked him in his own office. Dexter really did that. He really pulled that off. You gotta hand that to him. He really pulled that entire scheme off flawlessly, and it was like right under your noses. For a little bit you were like, why is he like lying about blood? Like, what's going on? Oh, it made sense. It eventually made sense. The oddest thing about this entire thing is we as an audience don't really root for Dokes here. The writers have partially managed to warp your view of what's right and wrong. Dokes is literally just a cop doing his job here, with some illegal surveillance here or there, but mostly Dokes is not in the wrong here. The fact that Dexter set this whole situation into motion just to get Dokes off the force shows how cunning he is as a person. Oh, also, I kind of forgot to mention, Deb breaks up with her boyfriend in like a scene or two before this, and I honestly couldn't care less. That man was so fucking boring. Everyone say bye, Gabriel. In another scene this episode, Deb confesses her feelings for Special Agent Lundy. Oh, that's awkward. And a little bit later on, Lundy comes to the realization in one of these task force meetings that this manifesto they've been given is all a crock of shit. None of it is correlated to the BHB at all, and he basically figures out Dexter's plan to kind of throw the task force off of his back and like off his trail. Elsewhere, Lila burns her apartment down after Dexter ignores her call. This is all a ruse to get Dexter's attention. Lila, if you couldn't figure out at this point, is the embodiment of all of Dexter's chaotic behavior. Rather unusual for Dexter, who notably finds an organized and precise manner of conducting himself more natural. Lately, he's been a little shifty, unbalanced, and uncoordinated. Look no further than the inconsistency in his kill schedule. At the start of the season, he was unable to kill anyone, let alone on a regular basis. After a few failed attempts, he finally gets it right at the end of episode 2 when he kills Chino. Since then though, he's only slain 2 new victims, the first in episode 3 and the second in episode 6. By the halfway point of last season, Dexter had killed almost double the amount he has in this one, proving he's been a little inconsistent. This inconsistency in his practice, along with the fact that he's being hunted by the FBI and his relationships all falling apart, all coincides with Lila showing up in his life. If Lila hadn't wormed her way into Dexter's life with promises of quote-unquote sobriety and change, Dexter's organization and meticulous scheduling might have found its way back on course. And now he's somewhat spontaneously provoking his coworker Dokes, who, by all accounts, really didn't need to be provoked to stay on Dexter's trail, but now that he has been, you best believe he won't give up on his suspicions. The next episode further explores Dexter and Lila's relationship and how it shakes Dexter's mojo. At the beginning of the 8th episode, we learn that Lila has started staying with Dexter and Deb. This whole living situation has kind of put a wedge between Dexter and Deb because Deborah obviously does not like Lila. A little bit later on at the station, Lundy presents his theory to everyone there that the Bay Harbor Butcher has a past in law enforcement. It's here where some additional FBI personnel are brought in to kind of take over the case from Miami Metro, leaving everyone who works in Miami just kind of jobless. They're still privy to that information, but they're not like on the front lines. In another scene right after this, Lundy invites Deb over for dinner at his place, which is, again, probably an HR violation. At Lila's place, Dexter realizes that the fire was not an accident. By looking at the different points of origin that Lila used with the blowtorch, fires don't start in multiple different places unless someone sets them. Back at the station, Dexter has a meeting with Lundy where they discuss his past working on some of the Bay Harbor Butcher victims' cases. Like before they were victims, when they were criminals, Dexter basically worked on quite a lot of their cases, and Lundy obviously is interviewing everyone in the station to kind of clear their name as from being the Bay Harbor Butcher, and Dexter has worked, I believe, on 4 of the cases that they have open. So yeah, this causes Dexter to be extra nervous during this meeting. At one point, Lundy accuses Dexter of some sloppy blood work during one of these cases being the reason that this person was let go from persecution, stating that had Dexter not done sloppy blood work on this case, this person would be behind bars and not in a trash bag at the bottom of the ocean. While he's definitely not accusing Dexter of anything, he's certainly giving him a hard time about it.
The Rodrigo case. Let's talk about that one. Kind of blew it, didn't you? Sorry? Anthony Rodrigo, crack dealer with an apparent habit of killing people who got in his way. They finally tied Rodrigo to one of his victims, built a solid manslaughter case. Would have got him off the street for a few years. But the case largely rested on the blood work that you did.
Dexter apologizes and claims that he was overworked, which Lundy finds to be a lazy answer, but an acceptable one at that. That night, Lila attends Dexter's bowling game and flirts with Batista and Masuka. Outside the bowling alley, Santos Jimenez, yes, that Santos Jimenez, the man who killed Dexter's mother, shows up and attacks Dexter in the parking lot. The next morning, Doak stops by the station and avoids getting questioned by Lundy. Elsewhere, Dexter follows Santos out into the middle of the Florida Everglades. They finally reach a cabin in the swamp. Dexter turns on the radio to bring Santos outside in order to subdue him. And in the following scenes, Dexter finally kills the man who killed his mother.
Here we are again. What the? I know, I keep asking myself that same question. Let me out of here. I'm finding it's best to accept things you can't change, you know? Normally I'd have a chat to make sure you understand why you're here. I think you have a pretty good idea.
I'll fucking kill you!
No, Mr. Jimenez. I'm gonna kill you tonight for what you did to my mother. Because, well, this is what I do best. It's kind of fitting, don't you think?
Just after this, though, Dexter finds out that Lila is the one who set up the attack by Santos in that parking lot. She called Santos and told him to be there to attack Dexter in order to get him to return to her place and embrace her. This is all because Lila wants Dexter to stop pulling away from her. Oh yeah, Dexter also learns that Lila stole his key to Rita's house, allowing her to break inside. Dexter rushes back to Miami and learns that there is no sign of Lila at Rita's. A little bit later on, Dexter confronts Lila about calling Santos. Oh yeah, and another scene, this episode is insane by the way. Dokes raids Dexter's apartment without a warrant, because he's not on the force. He raids his apartment and finds the blood slides in Dexter's air conditioning. I repeat, Dokes finds the blood slides. Oh yeah, in another scene, Deb and Angel discover that the Bay Harbor Butcher used a drug dealer's car to kill a suspect from 2002. This confirms for them that the Bay Harbor Butcher works for Miami Metro because the only way to get access to this drug dealer's car is if you were an employee at the police station. Having this confirmed for them is a really emotional situation because they just learned that one of their coworkers is a killer. The morning after killing Jimenez, Dexter wakes up from a dream where he drags Jimenez's body into the station for everyone to see. When he awakens, he is reminded of the mess he has to clean up at the cabin. Dexter actually wakes up in front of Rita's house and apologizes for sleeping in her front yard. You see, Dexter was just keeping an eye out for Lila in case she decided to show up again in the night.
I want to say something. I'm sorry.
All right.
I feel such regret, which is rare for me.
It's here where Dexter realizes he's also being followed by an FBI agent, which is curious. He decides to head to work instead of the cabin to clean up Jimenez. At the station, Lundy and the rest of the FBI agents gather like a swarm of bees in the bullpen. Maria, Angel, Dexter, and others are left to speculate on what has them all frazzled. The Miami Metro employees all come to the conclusion that they must have found a prime suspect in the BHB case for them to be gathering like this. Elsewhere, Dokes visits with an old friend who can get him access to a secret lab to test Dexter's blood slides. Dokes plans to use this evidence from Dexter's own AC to get himself back on the force and get Dexter outed as the Bay Harbor Butcher. That night, Lila and Dexter go bowling with everyone from the station. A little bit later on, Dexter confronts Lila in the bathroom. After returning to his apartment, Dexter learns that his blood slides have gone missing, immediately suspecting Lundy as the person to take them because of this big break in the case. Just then, Deb walks in and sees Dexter in panic mode before there is a knock at the door and Dexter is brought to the station by a couple of FBI agents. At this moment, Dexter and the audience are both convinced that it's over for Dexter. He's about to be found out as the Bay Harbor Butcher.
My old friends, here to betray me.
Please sit down.
However, once Dexter gets to the station, he finds out that these blood slides they're having him look at belong to James Dokes. Obviously, Dexter knows that he's the one that has the blood slides, like they're his blood slides, but the FBI and Miami think that it's Dokes because they found the blood slides in the trunk of Dokes' car, and they're bringing Dexter in to catalog and categorize them based on all of the bodies. Everyone in the station is in utter shock. Not a single person expected James to be the Bay Harbor Butcher, and that's obviously because he's not. Just then, Maria gets a call from Dokes, who claims he's innocent. Dokes states,
"Look, the next time you see me, there'll be no doubt. Until then, you won't be able to contact me.
Don't you disappear on me, James.
I just want you to know that you meant a lot to me, more than you know, and I just want to thank you for that."
What does that mean? But wait.
Heartbroken, Maria is forced to say goodbye to Dokes before the phone call ends. Dokes then destroys his phone and plans to go AWOL for the rest of his life, I guess. Maria then confronts Lundy about his decision to go public with the whole Dokes is the Bay Harbor Butcher thing, and that doesn't really go all that well. Maria emotionally backs Dokes, which is not surprising at all since they spent time together as partners. Later on, over the phone, Rita confesses to Dexter that she wants to talk with him about their relationship and attempt to work things out. After being guarded at his apartment by FBI agents, Dexter has to sneak out through the back window in order to get back to the cabin to dispose of Jimenez's body. After finally dumping the rest of Jimenez's body in the boat, Dexter is confronted by none other than the former Sergeant James Dokes.
That's right, motherfucker. It's over.
How'd you find me?
GPS tap on your boat. Jesus Christ, Morgan. Jesus fucking Christ, you're the Bay Harbor Butcher.
I really hate that name.
Gag of the century. Dokes has just actually caught Dexter in the act after seeing his collection of blood slides, which kind of tipped him off of the fact that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher, but now Dokes has definitive proof. He's seen Dexter in the act of disposing a body. The two have a tense stare down, with Dokes forcing Dexter to surrender. This causes Dexter to attack Dokes, eventually gaining the upper hand, allowing himself to be uncuffed. Lastly, Dexter decides to hold Dokes in that cabin, placing him inside of this giant cage that he found in there. I just love the way they framed the scene and how it was acted by Eric King and Michael C. Hall. Dokes finally got his man, but at what price? Dexter is now saddled with a choice to make. At the end of the episode, Dokes says,
You're gonna have to kill me, Morgan! You're gonna have to fucking kill me, Morgan!
essentially, that is Dexter's only option at this point. If he lets James go, he runs the risk of James outing him as the Bay Harbor Butcher to everyone in Miami Metro. But he also can't just leave Dokes in the cabin because that will run the risk of him escaping anyway. Dexter is truly stuck between a rock and a hard place here. I said at the beginning of this video that the relationship between Dokes and Dexter was very important this season, and no more is that apparent than here in this episode. With Dokes as Dexter's prisoner, Dexter is going to go through one of his hardest moral dilemmas yet. Sergeant Dokes has killed people before, so technically he fits Harry's code. However, James is not a bad person at all. I mean, he's a little rude and a little short, but he's not a bad person. He doesn't go out and preemptively kill people. So whether or not he fits into Harry's code is actually a little blurry. Therefore, according to Dexter, killing him wouldn't necessarily be justified. Then there's also the first rule of the code, don't get caught. Dexter has to consider that as well, because if he just lets Dokes go like it's nothing, he'd be directly going against the first rule of the code, which is don't get caught. So Dexter really has no other option but to kill Dokes at this point. Perfect writing in my opinion. Picking up right where the last episode left off, episode 10 opens with Dexter cleaning the bullet wound in his leg, with Dokes in the cage right next to him. The next morning, Lundy confesses to Deb that he is going to be leaving Miami when this case ends. A little bit later on, Deb stops by Maria's office to lecture her about answering a phone call from Dokes. Deb then tries to relate Maria's situation to her own when she was dealing with the whole ice truck killer situation.
Your task force doesn't need my help railroading a good cop.
Dokes was officially a person of interest. Not reporting that call could be considered aiding and abetting.
None of you wanted to hear what he had to say, so I didn't tell you.
And if he calls again?
He won't.
And you know this?
Because I know him.
I thought I knew someone too.
I know him. So if Lundy wants to flag me to Captain Mathis, you tell him to go for it. But James knows that I believe in him, so it was worth the risk.
Elsewhere, Rita stops by Dexter's place and tries to clarify where they stand in their relationship, before inviting Dexter to the beach with her later that week. At work, Dexter tries to convince Lundy to take the protective detail off of him so that he can go back to the cabin and try to figure out what to do with Dokes. Otherwise, he will be followed there. Yeah, that's why he's asking Lundy. That night, Dexter returns to the cabin and reveals to Dokes that he has to kill him. Dexter claims that his decision to eventually kill Dokes came down to the fact that Dokes is a lone wolf and not that many people would care about him once he's gone, versus Dexter, who has Rita and the kids and Deb who care about him and would be sad to see him go. Dexter sedates Dokes with the water that he gives him. As Dokes is passing out, he says,
My father was a legend on the force.
Is that what you think? They never told you.
Told me what?
Hey!
Instead of killing James, Dexter decides to plant his fingerprints on Dexter's tools in order to provide the FBI with hard evidence that Dokes is the Bay Harbor Butcher. At the cabin, Dokes reveals to Dexter that his father's passing is not what it seems. The next morning, Dexter confronts Matthews about Harry's death. Matthews reveals that Harry actually killed himself and he didn't actually overdose on accident. This realization rocks Dexter to his core. This common theme of revealing more and more about Dexter's past as the seasons go on are part of what makes these first few seasons so compelling to me. The sheer amount of twists regarding Harry in this show is kind of astounding when you think about it. At the station, Maria gives Lundy definitive proof that Dokes isn't the Bay Harbor Butcher. This, however, is not enough to convince Lundy to take the bait and take Dokes off the suspect list. He tosses her evidence out. Also, in another scene, Lila and Angel are having dinner together. Lila roofies herself to make it look like Angel was trying to date rape her. More on that later, though. Back at the cabin, Dokes tries to talk Dexter off the ledge. Dokes watches as Dexter kills an intruder in the cabin, and he is absolutely disgusted by Dexter's behavior. Seeing him dispose of a body is not the same thing as watching Dexter literally kill someone in front of him. Oh yeah, also throughout this episode, we learn through a series of flashbacks that Harry walks in on Dexter killing one of his first few victims and is absolutely disgusted by him. Dexter, in the present day, is led to theorize that this is the reason Harry killed himself, because he was so disgusted by what he had created in Dexter. After learning about 1, his father's suicide, and 2, the fact that it was pretty much all his fault, Dexter goes into a bit of an existential crisis. Dokes tries to get Dexter to turn himself in now that Dexter's world has just come tumbling down. This even leads Dokes to offer bringing Dexter in as his prisoner to present him as the Bay Harbor Butcher, you know, kind of as like emotional support for Dexter, I guess, so he doesn't have to go through it alone. Dexter then gets a call from the hospital where he learns that Lila was date raped by Angel. So Dexter leaves the cabin and heads back to Miami. The next day at the station, the FBI explains to everyone that the knife kit found in the ocean belongs to Sergeant Dokes, pretty much confirming he is the Bay Harbor Butcher. Back at the cabin, Dokes finally breaks free from his cage before heading off into the middle of the swamp to find his way back to Miami. However, Dokes is found by 2 men on a boat who knock him down once they find out that he is a cop. A little bit later on, Dexter arrives back at the cabin to find Dokes being held captive by the 2 men. Dokes and Dexter lock eyes before kind of signaling to each other that they need to work together to kill these 2 randos.
Apúrate! Esteban! 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 Hijo! Ah!
Dexter then kind of entertains Dokes' idea to bring him in as the Bay Harbor Butcher and clear Dokes' name.
Toying with an idea. I've been under federal investigation for 2 months. My trophies were stolen.
Sorry.
The code I live by has been shattered. I have a co-worker in a cage. Things aren't going so well.
No shit.
Harry killed the wrong person.
Morgan, you're not thinking about...
Kill myself? No, that's pathetic. But I can't live in this house of cards anymore. Waiting for it all to fall down. I need to do something, you know? I'm thinking about turning myself in.
That's a good call, Morgan. That's a tough call, but that's a good call, man.
I need some fucking relief.
Yeah, you can't keep running, man. That's for pussies. You're just gonna end up in exactly the same situation. Yeah.
Prison. I could finally get some sleep. The long run would be easier on Deb. Rita. Better than watching me dragged in like an animal, which, let's face it, will happen someday.
Dokes eventually gets through to Dexter, and Dexter pretty much says he will go along with it as long as his crazy sleepless schedule and anxiety goes away. In the morning, Dexter tries to force Lila to back off the lawsuit, citing the fact that he's leaving Miami and trying to expose Angel of a crime he didn't commit without reaping the benefits of getting back with Dexter would be pointless since Dexter's leaving. Lila steals Dexter's GPS out of his car, and a little bit later on, Dexter says what he believes is going to be his final goodbye to Rita and the kids while on the boat. Back at the station, Deb reveals that Lila's fingerprints led her to finding out that Lila has an expired visa that expired 2 years ago, and Deb can legally deport Lila from the country because she's not a legal US citizen. So Deb heads right to Lila's house and basically explains the situation to her that she's gonna have her deported if she doesn't self-deport. Instead, Lila decides to use Dexter's GPS to lead her back to the last location he went, which was the cabin out in the middle of nowhere. Oh wait, also at the end of the episode, Dexter has made a decision about this whole turning himself in thing after having dinner with Deb, stating,
Harry may have rejected me, but Deb clearly believes in me, so why shouldn't I? I'm not turning myself in. This isn't Harry's life. I made a plan to frame Dokes, and I'm going to stick with it.
Picking up right after the penultimate episode, the season finale sees Lila walking into the cabin in the Everglades. Dokes tries to ask Lila for help before Lila hears Dokes' story and hears that Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher. Upon hearing this information, she actually feels bad for Dexter and sees Dokes as a loose end that needs to be dealt with before Dexter gets caught by someone. In order to protect Dexter, she decides to burn the cabin down while James is still inside. James was one of the best characters in this show, and now he is no more. It just sucks because like we were just getting to know Dokes a little bit better, like learning more information about his special ops. I think it was in Haiti, I'm not sure. And then also his relationship with Maria was like just developing, like we were just seeing a little bit more there as far as like their past goes. It's such a shame that they decided to kill him because like I really enjoyed his presence in the last couple episodes with like the whole moral dilemma that Dexter has to go through with trying to decide if he should kill Dokes or not. It seems like those two were kind of forming some kind of relationship that was beyond just Dokes being freaked out by Dexter. Under the circumstances, it's a little weird that that relationship even came about, but I guess we tread on. Just then, Dexter arrives at the cabin and learns of the fire. This leads Dexter to question his beliefs in God, thinking that maybe this was an act of God that burned the cabin down, but it's like, who do we know in our life that likes to burn things to the ground? The next morning, Miami Metro discovers Dokes' burned remains in the swamp. This is when Maria shows up at the worst possible time and sees her former partner, or at least what remains of him, burned to a crisp. I genuinely feel so bad for Maria. Like, she does some pretty awful things, as we've talked about before, like, you know, sleeping with her coworkers and boss's boyfriend to get her job back. Maria as a character, I just always feel so bad for her in like some scenarios. A little bit later on at Rita's house, Dexter drops by and fully reconciles with her. Elsewhere, Deb tries to convince Lundy to stay in Florida with her, and it's like, girl, we don't have time for this right now. At the station, Dexter learns that the stove was turned on at the cabin while the gas was running, and that like caused the cabin to go up into flames. And this is what makes Dexter believe that Lila had something to do with this, so he figures out that she stole his GPS and found her way there. Later on, Dexter meets with Lila at the aquarium. Lila is curious about how and why Dexter kills people, seeing as this is the first time she's ever known about it. In this scene though, Dexter accuses Lila of being a sociopath before he says that he accepts her for that. Dexter is just playing Lila, you guys. He is pretending to be interested in her so that he can get somewhat close to her to, you know what I mean? It's here where the two make plans to run away together. Oh yeah, also Maria begins collecting donations for a memorial service for James, something that Deborah feels is wrong, considering the fact that Dokes was a mass murderer, at least according to the evidence. The next day, Deborah shows up at Lila's apartment to see if she's left the country yet, at the exact same time that Dexter shows up to try to kill her.
Over here.
The door was open.
I just stepped out to buy some snacks for the road trip. Come to say goodbye. Actually, we came to see that you cleared out. But now that we see you're on your way, we're good to go. Have a nice fucking life. You're not coming with me then? Oh my God. What did you do to make her so pathetically crazy for you?
Dexter leaves without his bag, and a little bit later on, Lila opens the bag and sees that he has the syringe full of M99 in it, the syringe that was meant for her. Elsewhere, Lundy tells Deb that he has gotten another job across the country, forcing him to break up with Deb. A little bit later on, Lila breaks into Rita's house and kidnaps her kids. Dexter learns about this and heads to Lila's place to rescue them. After Dexter arrives, Lila then burns her own apartment down for the second time this season. One thing about Lila, she loves a flame. This forces Dexter to break the kids out of the apartment, saving their lives. A few days later, at the end of the episode, Dexter catches a flight to Paris and subdues Lila in her new apartment, making her his final kill of the season. Dexter quickly plunges a knife into her chest and disposes of her body. I will say this scene is extremely rushed, and I wish they would have taken a little bit longer giving her a proper send-off. The next day, Dexter is seen attending James Dokes' service with Maria as the lone attendees. Dexter then claims,
"The code is mine now, and mine alone. So too are the relationships I cultivate. They're not just disguises anymore. I need them, even if they make me vulnerable."
This is a huge switch up from the first season, where Dexter only needed people in his life to hide who he was. Now, he needs the people in his life in order to survive. Without Rita in his life, Dexter was lost. His stability was rocked. In a similar vein, the thought of the possibility of getting caught made him cherish his supposed final moments with Deborah, causing him to reconsider giving up. If anything, James and Lila both taught Dexter something about himself, even if it was unintentional in both cases. Dexter is not an emotionless monster. Dexter has feelings. He loves Rita, and he loves Deb, and he loves those kids, and that's enough for him currently. And that finally concludes season 2 of Dexter. In the next season, Dexter will be challenged by a few other things, but I will definitely say season 3 is definitely my least favorite season out of the first half of the show. I separate Dexter into the first 4 seasons and the last 4 seasons in terms of like quality, and in the first 4 they're nearly flawless except for season 3. I think it's a little bit boring if you ask me, and the villain just doesn't really do it for me. So stay tuned for season 3 because I'm hoping to get to that within the next couple months. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!